At least 2 people experiencing homelessness in the city of Toronto have tested positive for COVID-19. And right across the country, there are questions about how do we care for people who are living on our streets, who are living precariously, and also in our shelters. Tim Richter is the president and the CEO of the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. He is joining us this morning from Calgary. Thanks for being here.
Good morning.
Your alliance is speaking with homeless sector organizations right across the country. Give us a sense of what are their most pressing needs right now.
Well, there's a couple of really big concerns right now. First is donations seem to be drying up into the shelters and housing service providers. That's creating some real concern. There's also some staffing worries. Staff for the shelters have to go and take care of their own families. Some worry about getting sick themselves. There's a real lack of personal protective equipment in the shelters. So the masks and gowns and gloves that the healthcare system needs also is needed in the homeless shelters to care for people. So those things are driving some real concern and some fear that some shelters in Canada could be closing for lack of staff or a lack of funding.
Yeah, there's a real challenge because although if someone goes and gets tested and follows the procedures of get tested, then you're supposed to isolate. Well, how do you stay at home? How do you isolate? How do you practice safe physical distancing and hand washing if you don't have a place to wash your hands and if you don't have a place to stay? How devastating could this outbreak be for Canada's homeless population?
Honestly, it could be really, really brutal. They have, in our homeless system, we have people that already have compromised health systems, right? So they have respiratory disease, they have other underlying medical problems. We already know homelessness without COVID-19 can take 25, 30 years off your life. The average life expectancy of a person experiencing homelessness in Canada is 50 years. So we know that is a real concern because they're already vulnerable. They're living in close quarters. They don't have access to hygiene like everybody else. It's difficult to get that spacing. They don't have access to healthcare like everybody else. And so those factors combine to make this a real powder keg.
The city of Ottawa has opened an isolation shelter. That's for those who have been diagnosed with COVID-19. A lot of the major cities across the country, they're attempting right now to follow suit. The federal government, we know, has dedicated just over $150 million towards the homeless community. What do you make of the response that you've seen so far, and what else needs to be done?
Well, I'm really actually quite glad at how quickly the federal government has responded with cash. But the real need in communities right now is to have the local public health agencies, the provincial public health agencies, and the local emergency management organizations help shelters do a few really important things. First is we've got to open some new shelters or find a way to create space, like here in Calgary, they used hotels, right? So that we have an opportunity to reduce the number of people in the shelters, create that social distancing. The second thing, we need access to testing. We don't actually know for sure how many people may or may not have COVID in the shelter system. We don't think there are many right now. We have the official numbers, but we need that testing to make sure that stays the case. We also need to make sure that there is enough room for isolation and quarantine. So if we think somebody has COVID-19, we've got to move them out of the shelter system rapidly, put them into isolation like every other Canadian is isolating at home. And we also need to make sure that the shelter organizations have that personal protective equipment, the mask, the gown, the gloves, so that they can take care of themselves and their families.
Tim Richter, I want to thank you for joining us from Calgary this morning with a look at the picture right across the country for our homeless communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.